Let's hit the high road. Let's hit the high road. It's the first touch, strong connection. It lays deep in your soul. Feel the kindness strongly coming. 'Cause you can achieve your goal. Let's hit the high road. Let's hit the
Hey, it's Nancy Yearout, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. And today we're going to talk about a subject that I think a lot of people would like to have some answers to, have some healing from. And it's, the loss of a child or the loss of a parent. It's just how do you deal with the loss? And today, Vickie Menendez is here to help us learn how to heal. And welcome, Vickie, to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
Oh, I'm excited you're here. She's written a cool book called Crystal's Butterfly Effect. If you're watching me on YouTube, I'm holding it up right now. This is the mother of all memoirs. It's a mother's journey from loss to transformation. And so we're going to hear Vickie's story today. And before we get into it, I just want to say blessings out there for all the people who are healing and who have really come to faith because of Charlie Kirk's assassination. I have to say, in the wake of his funeral coming up, I think it's tomorrow, there are so many people who have stood up and said, I believe. And to me, that's the greatest thing. And so he didn't die in vain, in my opinion. And I just want to mention that today. I don't know if you want to say anything, Vickie, about this, but it really came near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, I mean that's never anything that you want to see happen to anyone, and of course my um, heart goes out to his family and the people that cared about him.
Yeah, because you know what this is like. Before we get into Vickie's story, let me give you a little information about her. Vickie Menendez is an author and a self-care, wellness, and transformational coach whose personal journey through profound loss has shaped her life's mission. Having faced the heart-wrenching experience of losing four children, Vickie has channeled her grief into a compassionate crusade to help others heal and find peace. And I have to commend you. What a powerful book this is. And I'm just going to ask that you tell your story.
Okay. Um, well, I've gotten really good at telling this in a condensed version so that people can really understand that everything that happens to us through our life is kind of this layered effect of how all of that weaves together and creates the person that we are, you know.
Yeah.
And my journey started back when I was really little. I was in a very dysfunctional home. My dad was an alcoholic, and there was fear there. There was, not a feeling of safety at all times. Although we knew he loved us, there was always that fear and that instability. But the one thing that I always look back on, because I was really close to my dad, is that I looked at what I felt like that he was having a hard time with his journey, like with his wounds from childhood and that kind of thing. And he didn't really know how to process that. So he used alcohol to numb himself,
Hmm.
but the one thing that his soul did, and that while he was trying to figure all of that out, was he taught my sister and my brother and I how to sing and how to harmonize together. And at the time,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, at the time I didn't connect it, but now, studying frequencies, studying all of these tools that I have, I
Hmm.
realized that he was creating this protection around us. Frequency is healing, and when we were singing, we were safe. We felt held. We felt really good. And just hearing us harmonize with each other. We used to give ourselves goosebumps because, when you have family harmonization, there's nothing like that. Like the tone shift.
So interesting to
Yeah,
hear this, Vicki. This is
right.
so interesting. Well, I just want to ask really quickly, so do you think you were trying to help him heal? Is what I pick up here. I don't know.
Well, I think that
In a way, you know what I
in,
mean?
in a way, yeah. And when he heard us sing, of course, I'm sure that that was healing to him
Right,
on some level.
right.
But looking back, I can see how tortured his soul was, how he was trying to get through his own stuff, but he didn't know how. He
Right,
had no tools to do that because
right.
back then, I mean, I'm 65, so that was 60 years ago almost. And that was before people really got spiritual, like to the to the degree that we are processing things now. I think we're in a totally different era when
Oh
it comes
yeah,
to
yeah.
processing grief and processing emotions and all of that kind of thing.
Right.
And another thing that I always lean on is a day that my dad and I were building this rock wall together. He was a contractor, and I learned everything from hanging sheetrock to laying subflooring. I mean, I've done it all.
That's
But
awesome.
we were building this rock wall together one day, and my dad didn't give out um, compliments very often. So when he did give a compliment, you knew he meant it and it came from his heart.
Right.
He stopped and looked at me and said, Vicki, I think you could do anything you set your mind to. And what did that one sentence do for me? I used it throughout my life. Anytime that I had any doubt or fear about what I was doing, that rang in my ear.
Isn't that interesting that he planted that into your brain?
Yeah. And
That's
we don't think that those little things matter. But there's another thing that he did for my son, for Jesse. Uh, he bought him a little action figure. And they were going home, and my son had his hand out the window trying to make it fly,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it comes out of his hands. He goes back, turns around. This is not like my dad, and went back to the store, got him another figure, and so that he wouldn't be upset.
So he
And
did have compassion, is what you're
he
saying.
did. He really did. And, my son would talked about it up until the day that he passed. That was one memory that stuck in his mind forever. So we can't discount all of the little things. And those are the things that really support us sometimes when we're in need of just being able to look back on those moments
Those
because
small
they're
acts,
big.
yeah, those small acts of kindness. Well, where was your mom? Can I ask that?
Well, my mom was there, but she was trying to deal with four kids and an alcoholic husband, and it was kind of a situation where I think at that time, I mean, that was many years ago, and women didn't leave. They didn't get out of situations like that.
Yeah,
They tried to make the best of them.
right.
And so looking back, I think she maybe regretted not doing more then, but she did whatever she felt like was right at the time.
Yeah.
And, we can look back on that, why didn't you do
No
this?
judgment, right? Right.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. At this point, she was doing the best she could do with her awareness at the time. And so and she sang too. We were a musical family, so we would sing together. My brother and sister and I sang together. He wrote music and played uh, instruments, and it was just there was a lot of music in our home, and that I think is what kept the energy for us. It kind of created that protective bubble for us.
Really interesting you would say that. I can relate. My mom was a narcissist, but she was a singer with the big bands. And my sister played the piano, and we would all stand, as you're saying this, I'm thinking, wow, this is crazy. We would all sit around the piano or stand around the piano and sing when I was little. And those were the joyous times.
Yeah,
When you live with a narcissist or an alcoholic or any person who has a disorder like that, there you think about the joyful times. Well,
exactly.
fast forward a little bit, tell the audience you were married and talk about how this all evolved for you.
Well, I mean, I got married to my dad. Like, I married someone
Yeah,
next that had the same issues. And, you look back on it and think, oh, okay, what was I doing? What
Right.
was I trying to teach myself then? But anyway, I had my first loss was in 1980. I had a full-term stillborn. I went to the hospital to the doctor for a regular checkup, and he couldn't find a heartbeat.
Oh,
So I knew, and she was like, had turned to go into position for labor. It was just like any time I could have gone in. So she was full term. So I went into the hospital knowing that she wasn't coming home with me.
oh,
And it was my first delivery. So I was, beside myself, upset, I mean, it was a really horrific day. But they handed her to me. And I traced just every inch of her body and her face, and I could tell you right now what she looked like. And, their whole life just kind of flashes. The things that you would miss, the first tooth, the first steps, her walking down the aisle, all of those things that you dreamt about when you got pregnant with them. And it's been 45 years and it still chokes me up to talk about her.
yeah.
So those things never really disappear. You just learn I just have ways of connecting with those moments when I do think of her and just feel it as like a visit from her rather than a hurt or a wound. Um, but the only thing I left with that day was a lock of hair and her footprint. And so her book that I got in my shower is empty, other than that lock of hair and that footprint. And so that was difficult. And I was only 20 at the time. So
You were young. Yeah.
I was young. I had no idea how to process that. So I kind of internalized it, but I didn't know at the time. Now, going through the healing journey that we'll get to later, I realized how I had hung on to all of that and how it created this distance. Even though I loved the people around me and I loved the other children that I had, there was always that fear that was lived inside of me, always that fear of to love, and that it could be taken away from me or whatever. So I went on to have four other children, three with my ex-husband. And, time went by. I was always fearful and with every pregnancy, and I just kind of just kept going. You just
You
think
just keep, you do what you got to do. Yeah.
you just keep going.
Yeah.
But fast forward to 2017, my son Wesley, he was 33 at the time. I found him dead of a drug overdose. And he was not in a good state. Like, he had been there for a little while, and that was a sight that you can't unsee.
No.
And
Found him, I take it.
I'm sorry.
You found him?
Yes, I found him. I was by myself, so that wasn't good either because it was like I was watching from a
Right. You're
side
out of
view.
your body
I
almost.
was. It was an out of body experience for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And I curled up in a ball for weeks, but then, I thought, I have to get back to work, I have to just keep going. And still I internalized. I didn't really process fully. Then
Mhm.
a year later, my dad passed. The very same moment my husband was having a heart attack, I was carrying him to the hospital. My sister calls and says, Dad just died.
Crazy.
And
This is crazy. Like, how much can I just need to interject here. How much can a person, they always say God only gives you what you can handle, right?
right. Well, I mean, this was, once you hear my entire story, you'll know how this was preparing me for what I'm stepping into and how committed I am to this because, I was given a story that nobody can forget.
Sure.
When I tell my story, they stop and listen. And sometimes people need to stop long enough to kind of reflect on their life and say, where do I need to be more grateful? Where do I need to connect with the people that are still in my life? So that day was like a blur because before I could even get into the hospital, park my car and get into the hospital, they already had my husband on the table putting stents in his heart. And thank God he survived that. But I always felt like that my dad kind of took one for the team, that on a soul level, that
You
he
couldn't
was
have
like,
handled it both. You couldn't have handled that. It would
right.
have been too
So I
much.
think he left like to save my husband. You know,
Yeah.
he needed to be there. Okay, if one of us are going to go, I've lived a full life, and we had a really good, tight relationship, my dad and I, and so that was like I was again kind of like in a numb state. It's like
Yeah.
so much going on at the same time. So it took me about a year after my dad, and I was looking at a picture of myself, and I couldn't recognize the person that was staring back at me in the photo. I was smiling, but behind that smile, you could see the pain just written all over my face. And I felt it. You know, I was having body aches from head to toe. I mean, all of the things that would show up when you're
Yeah.
going through that kind of trauma
It's interesting that you
showed up.
recognized that in yourself. I will
Yeah.
say that. That's interesting that you saw that in yourself. Was that kind of a wake-up call when you saw that in yourself?
That was a wake up call. And I had done a lot of spiritual, like, had looked at a lot of that, except I just didn't know how to really process those emotions and how to get them out of my body because I knew that they kind of lived there, but I didn't know. I thought they just had to live there. You know, I didn't know that there were tools that I could use
Yeah.
to help move those energies and kind of make room for love and joy to come back
Yeah,
in.
release the negativity.
Yeah, well, we think we have to live with that stuff, but we really don't.
Hmm.
So so then I thought, you know, I've got to do something. So I hired a spiritual coach, and I spent the next year just diving in and
Wow.
really digging deep. And just in the first 30 days, because I was ready, everything that had happened throughout my life, the dysfunctional home, I had bullying from the time I was halfway through the second grade through high school from this one person, my nemesis. And I never knew when the shoe was going to drop. Like she wasn't on my case all the time, but I never knew when she was going to come in and wreak havoc in my life or make me feel like I was less than or and I you know I was young then. I didn't know how to process that or look at it.
Yeah, and she must have saw your vulnerability.
Right. Yeah, because I mean I was coming from a wounded place already.
Right, right.
Having
So she
that,
saw that and picked up on it. That's
yeah.
so crazy.
And then I also had a sexual trauma from three boys when I was a teenager. All of that stuff came up. And that was a trauma that I never shared with anybody. Like I was so shameful over that that I kept it to myself for 50, 47 years or whatever. I was 60 when I started my healing journey. And I realized that looking back on my relationships and everything, all of those things affected how I moved through life, how I had relationships with other people, and at what a distance, you know, especially like your husband, you know, the intimacy, the sexual trauma affected that.
Well, I'm going to say something here real quick that I've recognized, and I bet you have too, is that the boys, as well as your husband, were people that you attracted energetically because you were on the same frequency. And those
Yeah.
boys, as well as they're all trying to work it out. And that's why you
Mhm.
all came together. Isn't that interesting to realize? Because I realized that I've had things happen in my life, and I'm like, oh, well, that's where my frequency was, and that's why I attracted those type of people. And
Yes.
and in the interaction, and then you look back and think, wow, they were traumatized too.
Mhm. Oh, one of them was for sure. I knew at the time his dad was an alcoholic and he was acting out in,
See, that's what
in
I'm
ways,
saying. Isn't
right?
it crazy?
Yeah. And I believe in soul contracts as well. I believe that
Right.
we have contracted with everyone that has crossed our paths in our lifetime. And they're there for a purpose. They're there because we've agreed for them to come and help us heal from something, whether it's from this lifetime or even a previous lifetimes,
Right.
things that are imprinted in our DNA when we come into this
I
life
agree.
experience. So that was really interesting that all of that stuff,
Wow.
no matter how much you think you've worked on it, I think anytime you have a profound experience like that, a really heavy loss like that, there's layers, it'll still come up and you think, wow, I thought I've worked around that, I
Yeah.
thought I worked on this. But every time you think about something, it can kind of, it's almost like you're filing an emotion, filing a
You're
thought.
reliving it. You're reliving it because that's why they say live in the present moment. I just want to interject here because I'm learning
Yes.
too. And and you're teaching me as we talk today. I'm so excited to have you here. It's I've tried to do that. It's hard to control your thoughts, but when that thought comes in your mind, I'll just say this for the audience, you try to push it back or work through it or release it so you don't keep thinking about it. Because every time you think about it, it's just like it's happening over and over and over.
Right. And all of our thoughts is so powerful.
I know.
Thoughts, especially spoken words, you think about every time you speak, that's frequency. We're
Mhm.
spreading frequency, and even a thought, we're 70% water. And
Right.
the Dr. Emoto's study that the words that you speak, the emotions you feel, it resonates in your body.
Yes.
And
Vicki, I'm with you. I wrote about this in my book, Wake Up versus Speaking to. And it's exactly, you're absolutely right on. And I think people are starting to realize this, the energetics of our frequencies, of our bodies, of water, of our words, of our thoughts, and our emotions.
yes.
Anyway, continue on. I just want to get that out really quick.
No, I mean it's really amazing how when you know that you've got a mirror up in front of your face at all times, that you stop pointing fingers.
Right.
You start asking, what is this here to teach me? Instead of looking at it as, why did they do that to me? Because everything is for us. And then it's through us. We go, we process it, we figure out what it is there to teach us, and then all of that moves through us, and we're able to kind of release that and gain some wisdom from
Mhm.
it because we're here to expand, to grow,
Right.
to go into our next lifetime a little bit lighter, a little bit more with more wisdom.
And more
And
compassion. Yes. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Right on.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the next step is, I was happier than I'd been my entire life. It was like this healing journey was amazing, and we need that contrast, right? We need to know what true joy and love is, to
Mhm.
know what the opposite is, so, and we ebb and flow through life. We don't get to that happy place and just stay there. Sometimes we slide back into that cocoon and we have to do some more work. But in my opinion, that is just our soul saying, okay, you're ready for this, and
Right.
it'll give you exactly what you can process at the moment.
Right.
So then you process that, your wings come back out, you fly again until it's time for you to dive back in again. But when you see it that way, you don't feel like you're failing or taking a step backwards. You're just saying, ooh, I get to release something else today. So
Mhm.
how we go into it and the mindset that we have around our healing journey can make all the difference in the world. It doesn't have to be hard. It
Right.
can be graceful. It can be um, with
Exciting, actually.
exciting. Yes, absolutely. I don't
Yeah.
look at anything. I don't think over the past few years, nothing phases me as much anymore.
Mhm.
Nothing like triggers me to the point where I'm like upset or whatever. I've already been through some of those triggers, but what I was able to glean from it on the other side of it, I was like, it woke me up even more to what healing is really all about if we look at it with the right mindset.
Yeah. Well, what I'm picking up from you intuitively is that you're more centered.
Mhm.
And when you're more, now do you bring in the light every day? I would imagine you do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When I wake up in the morning,
Yeah.
the first thing I do is just show gratitude for the day, call in my angels, my guides,
Yep.
everybody to just walk with me and give
Right.
me the insight that I need, to give me the intention that I need to hold that day to show up not only for myself, but for others around me.
Mhm.
So then, walking through that healing journey, I knew at that point, and that was 2021 or first part of 2022, I was on my path. I knew that this was what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to guide others through their healing journeys because I have like 40 years in self-care and wellness. And that was been my passion my whole life. And I realized, wow, this is what I've been preparing for,
Mhm.
because sometimes we don't do that self-care. And it's not just about slathering on creams, it's about meditation and yoga or anything that resonates with us that will help us get centered and in the moment.
Right.
So I had already done like the 6 hour event called Worldwide Healing Event. I was ready. I had two more events lined up. And on Christmas Eve, I received a call that my daughter, she was 41 at the time, was rushed to the hospital. She had asthma really bad. And she had an asthma attack and went into cardiac arrest on the way to the hospital. And they were able to bring her back, but she had been under long enough that she had some brain damage.
Okay.
But I did not let that stop me to know that, miracles happen. And if
Right.
there's a miracle there for her, then that's what I'm going to try to focus on and bring in. So the only thing that I studied was people that came back from that, people that defied all odds. And because the doctors are always going to give you the worst prognosis. They're going to give you the you don't want things that you don't want to hear. But I kept reading about these success stories, and that's what I wanted to focus on because that's where I wanted my energy to come from,
Mm.
not from what might happen to
From
her.
fear, right. You didn't want to come from a place of fear. You wanted to come
Exactly.
from the positive that this is possible so that she could heal.
So she was in an induced coma the whole time. She was 48 days in the
Wow.
hospital. And there was moments where I felt like she was trying to connect. But the beauty of this whole stay in the hospital is that I came from a different place. I was energetically at a totally different place. If it had been 2 years before that, I would have walked in that hospital room just judging everything. Why didn't you take her to the hospital sooner? Hospital room,
Blame. Yeah, I
yeah,
see.
it can
Yeah,
become a battleground,
right.
especially when you have a lot of people that care for this person, that a lot of things can come up. So before I walked into that room, I just stopped for a second and just wanted to be there for her, to
Mm.
hold space for her because I knew even though she was in an induced coma, she knew everything and could feel the energetics in the room. So that room was a sanctuary. That room was only for love. If you had anything bad to say, you walk out of
Yeah,
that room and you
good
do
for
it
you.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
And she was never left alone. But we had to decide after 30 days, they had to put her into comfort care. And it was the doctors said, she may last for a couple of hours because what they do is they take away everything. And usually either their heart fails or, they go fairly quickly. Maybe a couple of days, they said. 19 days later,
Yeah.
she's still there. And the doctors are shaking their head. And I said, you don't know my daughter. She is, she was feisty, she had spirit and she still had work to do. And the one thing that she did that I really have to bring up is that me and her husband were never fans of each other. And so when they put her into comfort care, he said, I can't watch her die.
Oh,
And I said, Pete, there's no judgment here. You need to do whatever you need to do for yourself.
right.
So if you don't feel like you can be here, I understand. And just do what's good for you. He walks out of the hospital room, and I'm standing there with her. And he comes back in about 5 or 10 minutes later, and he said, Crystal turned me around at the stairs. He said, we don't leave people behind. I got chills
Oh
because
my
I
God.
knew that she choreographed this whole thing. She was the architect of us spending the next 5 days 24/7 together. We dropped everything, got to know each other. I heard his story, he heard my story, and we came to an understanding
You
of
connected. You connected.
yes. And
I
she
love
did
it.
that. She
Yeah.
did that. That was all her.
How many children did she have?
She had 4 boys.
See, that was, she wanted to make sure the connection was still, that's so cool. That's such a
And
blessing.
she knew that he would need me.
Sure.
He would need me raising these boys because she had boys. We actually had a baby 5.5 months apart. I had one with my husband now that I've been with for 31 years. And she tells me in the delivery room that she's pregnant with her first. And so they were born 5.5 months apart. So we were raising babies together. And and I still have my son of 24. He's 24 now. There's a whole story behind
That's
that.
Sebastian, right? Is that
That's
Sebastian?
Sebastian. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So so I spent a few days with them, helping them to kind of get organized because 48 days in the hospital, everything was like upside down. I go home to mourn her, and I go to the grocery store one day, and I'm standing in the middle of the grocery store and get a phone call. And it's the police trying to identify her brother, the fourth born, with my ex-husband. He was 37, and they were trying to identify his body,
Jesse,
Jesse. And they kept beating around the bush, and I'm like, I knew something was really wrong.
right?
I said, can you just tell me what happened? And because I don't think they're supposed to tell you those things over the phone. And he had a seizure in the pool and drowned. That was 12 days after Crystal passed. So again, I had this trauma stacked on top of trauma. And how much can one person
Take.
take? How much
Yeah.
can one person process? But it
Right.
was at that moment, even though it just totally shattered me, it left me asking the question, there must be something really huge that I'm supposed to do. I must have a purpose that we all agreed on, because I had already kind of signed in, or like got on board with the contracts and how all of those kind of weave into this mosaic,
The
and create
spiritual part of it. Yeah.
spiritual part.
Yeah.
All of my kids, all of us, we sat down at a table with God and said, okay, we're going to create a story that nobody can forget. And all of my kids, if I think about it, and it's just everything's unfolded over the past couple of years, and how all of them went out, and they all would have gone out, one dramatically, one shockingly, one slowly.
Isn't that something?
When you look at it that way, and it's like,
Mhm.
wow, this was really beautiful. And to be able to look at it that way, that
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's almost like a blessing to be able to see it that way. It really
yeah,
is. That means that you look how much you've grown and look what they did to help you grow. So you see it as they were here to help you get to a certain point so you could help other people.
right, right. And we were, like we're still walking this path together.
Sure. Yeah.
It's still unfolding. My son, the one that died from the overdose, was an amazing artist. And when I went to clean out his apartment, I found a piece of art that he'd been working on
Oh,
for
wow.
a long time. This piece of art was his entire life on one page. One side had all the things that he dreamt about, all the things he wanted. It showed him kneeling down and proposing. It showed him holding a baby. It showed success and a quote from Gandhi and his chains breaking. And it had his hands there with the chains
Oh
broken.
my gosh.
It's profound. And on the other side was all of the things that was dragging him back into the darkness, the needle, the gun, the prison, a tear coming from an eye, like it was all like this.
The light in the dark.
Oh my God, yes, yes. And
Yeah.
when I looked at it, I realized that we still had his contract with me was layered. He brought me to my healing so that I could get through the two losses that close together, but he also had a contract for me to be his vessel, to be me, to be his voice, to show his art for parents and for addicts. It's a message to addicts that, he had clothes laid out that day. He had plans. He didn't plan on overdosing. And for parents that look, there is more to your addict than the drug. They have these dreams, but they never voice them because they're afraid of being judged or saying, oh, well, you're just an addict. They do have those things. And can we look at our addict differently? Can we come from a place of love instead of judgment? And because when we light that path, it's an energetic exchange, right? When we give
Sure.
up on our children, they give up on themselves because they feel that from us. So if we can just come from love and
Not judgment. I think that's one of the biggest things I can say that you're talking about, as well as I see. It took me a long time to get past that judgment thing. I did it. I still work on it, but a really lot better than I used to be. But I recognize that you get to a point where you see it, and then you realize you can't judge other people, and they can't judge you. And when you judge others, and it's what Jesus talked about in the Bible, don't judge others if you don't want to be judged. And it's so much of our society, I just want to say this, is uh, people are just so afraid to be who they are because of what other people will think. And it's you have to get to a certain point where you're like, you don't care what other people think because you're so connected to God, it doesn't matter. I just
right.
want to say that.
And we get conditioned throughout our life. One of the parts of my book is your identity. Who are you?
Mhm.
We're identified as mother, brother, sister, aunt, but who are we at the core? Are we love, compassion? What do we embody? And can we connect with that rather than having, because when all of that fell away from me, it's like, then you lose who you are. Some people get lost, especially mothers. They're like, who am I now?
Well, yeah. Well, that's when the true authentic self comes through. We don't have a ton of time, but I do want to talk about some of your healing toolkits. And one thing that I wrote down, you did past life regression.
Mhm.
Did that really help you?
It did. I did, and then recently I did some Akashic records, and because there were certain energy around like the bullying and the trauma that I had as a young kid, that one thing that came up was that I was not abandoned but given up as a child
Ah,
in a
okay.
past lifetime, and that I was like in a home. And it felt so resonant with me. It was like, oh, that kind of explains some things.
Okay.
And I thought it was really interesting that she brought that up. But then she said, I don't think it affected you like you weren't traumatized or anything like that. You were almost like kind of motherly. You helped other kids in that home. And so that kind of, is parallel to what I'm trying to do now, is to help people through whatever they're trying to go through.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing I wrote down that you do is, of course, meditation, but journaling too.
Mm.
To me, I'll just say this, and I always tell the audience to journal because I journal to God and Goddess because I just get it all out and just ask for guidance and all of that. But to me, that has been very therapeutic. I grew up with a narcissistic mom and narcissistic family and kept marrying narcissists. And so I'm like you, I'm doing a healing thing for narcissists because I know what it's like to live with them. So just like you grew up with an alcoholic. And I guess when you write it down, I feel like it's releasing. Um,
Yes, absolutely.
don't you feel that? I mean, yeah, it just seems so helpful. Talk about that a
And
little.
it's really powerful to write it.
Right,
to really
exactly.
write it down in a book
With a
because
pen.
with a pen, because when you write, you invite.
That's right. And it sticks. And it sticks. I always say it makes it stick, you know?
And I have a lot of ideas around journaling and how to organize that so that you can go back on certain moments of your life and you can look back and see your growth. You know, you can see what you were thinking 2 years ago and where you are right now, because sometimes we don't celebrate ourselves enough for even the little things that we're able to get out of these journeys that we embark on. And it's nothing to be afraid of.
Right.
If you have somebody that can really truly guide you through it, it can be really graceful and humbling. And I think it's something that everybody should do. Because if I had not answered that call when my body was speaking to me, and we need to learn how to listen to our bodies,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
had I not answered that call, I don't think I would be sitting here talking to you today. And when people feel that weight, they feel it in their body and they don't want to, sometimes they feel like they can't even breathe, then that is a signal that you need to do some work. It
Hmm.
doesn't have to be
Absolutely.
hard. It's whatever meaning we give it. If we say it's going to be hard to do it, then it's going to be hard. So
I think a lot of people are going in. I'm trying to keep my cat from walking across the
that's
screen.
okay.
He wants to walk across the screen right
He
now.
wants to. He
No,
wants to
Piper.
be here.
Uh, yeah, and it's I'm in touch with my body. I know what you're talking about. And I think again, I'm going to go back to connecting with the divine, connecting with the love energy. It's really connecting with the earth, connecting with your angels, knowing you're not alone and bringing your vibration up by working through the things that have happened to you, the inner child work and all that kind of stuff. I do want to mention really quick before we get out of here today, because we got to get out of here. I love your story, and I'm so appreciative for you coming on today. You wrote love letters to your children at the back of this book, and I just want to mention that and just say that's so heartfelt. And I just thought that was such a beautiful thing that you did. And that was a release. Yeah, talk about that for a moment, if you
Oh
wouldn't
my
mind.
gosh, there's a story behind that.
Okay.
I was in the layout phase of the book and I kept sitting on it. I wouldn't sign off on it. And I'm like, okay, something's up here. Something is not right. It's not complete. I went to Denver to get my breathwork certification. And so you're working with colleagues, that you pair off. And she was kind of an intuitive too. And she said, oh, I'm getting something. She said, did you write your children letters? And I said, yeah. She said, they want you to put them in the book.
Oh my God, I'm getting chills, just so you know.
And as soon as she said that, I was like, that's it. Because I already thought of the Mandelas. I already had the Mandelas in there. And that was to honor my son, Wesley, my artist.
Mm.
And there's a Mandela on each chapter
Yeah.
that I have to interject. When you color all of the Mandelas, it brings the book to life.
Oh, I love it. That's fantastic. Guys, okay.
So as soon as she gave me that message, I'm like, okay, that's
If
what I was waiting on. Yeah.
if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm holding up one of the mandalas that you can color.
And
Yeah,
when you color them, it really does bring the book to life.
I love it.
This is one that I colored.
Oh, it's beautiful. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that. So if you guys are listening to us on the podcast, it threw out Crystal Butterfly Effect, and this is by Vickie Menendez. You guys, when you pick it up, it actually came with colored pencils. That was really nice. Your publicist, Sarah, sent me pencils, and I thought that was really cool and very unique. And it's to color all the mandalas. I think that's fabulous. Listen, we got to get out of here for today.
Okay.
Vicki, I just want to thank you for coming on and telling your story and sharing and letting people know that they can heal from loss.
That's possible. And we connect with our lost ones when we raise our frequency.
Right.
We raise our vibration, we can get up to the level they are. Think about how they're operating. They're operating on a very high frequency when they're in the spirit realm.
Mhm.
So can we connect with them, even if it's just for moments,
Mhm.
uh, just by raising our frequency?
Yeah, and being aware. Sell yourself. So what do you have? Do you have a website? Do you have classes? How do people get in contact with you, Vicki?
Well, my website is VickieMenendez.com, and that's VickieMenendez. I work with clients one-on-one. I have groups. Um, I'm working on a course that should be released very soon. I have an event that's coming up on October the 4th, so a lot of my energy has been going into that. I have a 6-hour event that has 3 body activations, and I know this may not air before then, but there's a lot of things that I'm working on to kind of bring people that whoever resonates with me, because I think everybody resonates with a different energy.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a lot of healing coaches out there, and thank goodness, it's going to take all of us to help heal the world, right?
I agree with you. And since you just said that, I'm going to bring up my healing class, you guys. So October 11th, we're on the same page. I'm going to have a free webinar, and it's for people who have dealt with narcissists and who've been through narcissistic abuse. And the same thing as you, how interesting. I'll be here to tell my story and help you guys heal from it. So I don't have the time yet, but stay tuned, and also pick up my angel book, you guys, The Guide to Angel Communication and Spiritual Law. All right, we're going to get out of here for today. Vickie, thanks again for being on the show. I want
Thank you,
everybody to
Patty.
have, you're very welcome. You guys have a fabulous week. Say prayers out there for each other and for the United States of America. Everybody take care and God bless.